So today I want to talk about the dark night of the soul. It sounds very ominous. And when you're in it, it most certainly is. It seems to be a very dark place. Um, a lot of people have gone through it. And if you're going through it, sometimes it will actually feel like depression. At least experientially, that's what I took it as, how I felt. Um, and I felt it for a very long time. And I always confused it for being depression. And I would say that there are a lot of people out there, spiritual people and people in the psychological field, that say that they're two separate things. For me, that's not what I experienced. I came to a conclusion finally at a certain point where that it the depression that I thought I was feeling and that I was seeking help for and that I was reaching out for was actually this dark night of the soul. And everything that I was doing was kind of more of a superficial fix, or um, that kind of more got you to maybe to function a little bit better within the walls and the structures that already exist. It gave you some coping skills to kind of move on to the next phase of your life, rather than diving into and seeing it for what it really is. And there was also some spaces where I could just completely avoided it because you don't want to experience that. It's dark. It's scary, and it feels like almost like you're going to get lost. It's like depression. It feels like, for me, it felt like it was just this dark space that completely envelops you. It takes over your entire being. You don't really see a way out of it. You don't see any sort of solution. You don't have really any kind of passion for anything. You really don't want to participate anymore. Even if you did come up with some good idea, or somebody invited you on some trip or something, like, you might participate in that and you might go do it, but it's kind of like an empty kind of process. That's kind of what I felt. A lot of therapists or even spiritual teachers may tell you to kind of, or if your friends and family, they may even tell you to kind of get out and do things, go and join a club, or maybe read a book, or occupy yourself. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. In fact, I did a lot of that stuff. I did go do yoga and paddleboard, and I did all sorts of things that were kind of getting out into nature. And in a way, that's kind of meditation. At some point, even in my experience going through this, is that meditation itself really didn't. I had been doing meditation almost the entire process of this dark night. But at some point, I didn't even want to do that because that seemed kind of empty too. It seemed like I didn't really, it's like, what's the point of all this? Why am I doing all this? You kind of see life as a facade, as kind of like a phony thing that we're just kind of all playing this silly game. And it seems like other people are having a great time. Some people are, and some people seem to be pretty miserable. A lot of people do. And you just get kind of exhausted, tired. I felt exhausted. I felt very tired. I didn't want to keep pretending and keep on playing this role. And you almost kind of want it to end. You want it to stop. It's almost like a self-hatred, maybe, even. You just don't want to keep going on with who you think you are, or who society told you you need to be. And that is actually the problem. That's actually how I eventually came out of this over a very long period of time. I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to spend all this time going through this process. And nobody else does either. They call it a dark night of the soul. And it may be, certain individuals may experience that in one night. They may have an enlightened moment and wake up from this illusion that they're living under, and they see a purpose and a brightness and a colorfulness of life that we all are here for, to experience, is a bliss. It opens the doors to that. You start to live your life more in that true self. For me, it took so long because of the fact of just I had a very strong ego, and that's really the problem that you're facing with the Dark Knight, is that you have this ego. We all have egos, and these egos are just these accumulations of all these beliefs and unresolved emotions and things that you picked up from your folks and from your brothers and sisters and from your schoolmates and from your teachers, and all these ideas of who you're supposed to be, and society tells you who you're supposed to be. But none of those things are an absolute truth. None of those things are who you truly are. Now, some people, a lot of people, go through their entire life and may never experience this, or they may get a glimpse of it, but then they just kind of move on. And other people, it just becomes so overwhelming that they're forced to kind of look at it. Some people may spend their entire lives in a dark night of the soul. For me, it was many years because I avoided it. And I did a lot of things that I tried to like sneak my way around it, or kind of stay in keep one foot in this egoic, world, materialistic world that we live in, and keep one foot in kind of the spiritual world. I didn't want to kind of completely jump in this direction, and I didn't want to take my foot out of that direction. It's not that you're not going to have a material life after you come out of the other end of this, but you do get to the point where you start to live more in your true self, or in your awareness, and you start to see the ego and all these structures for what they really are. All the fears, all the doubts, all the anxieties, and waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and feeling like you have to do something. If something's coming from that place of fear where you feel like you have to do something, or you have to find a girlfriend, or you have to get a new job, or you have to figure out a way that you can make $1 million, and it's coming from that place of anxiety or fear, that's from ego. That's your ego's driving you. It's pushing you. And that's just going to create a bunch of havoc for a bunch of people around you and for yourself. The true self is more of like a natural flow. It's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of naturally who you are at a very deep level, why you're here. And so what happens is that once you come to that point and you realize, God, this horrible feeling that I've been feeling for all these years, this depression, whatever you want to call it, and you might say it's not depression, you may say it's something completely different. Maybe that's your experience. For me, that's not my experience. I feel like they're kind of both the same thing. But once you come out the other end of that, and you start to see all the trouble your whole life that your ego has caused you, all the pain that your ego has caused you, and you start to see all these different things that happened in your life, maybe some financial disaster that you went through, or a bad relationship that you went through, or the job that you're in that you really don't like because it's too left-brained and you're a very creative right-brained person, and the depression and the all just the jams that we get ourselves into. Everybody gets themselves into jams or an unhappiness, or they're just kind of not quite clear on what they're doing here. You start to realize that all those were really created by the ego, but they were created for a purpose, for you to learn and to grow. But a lot of times we don't do that. We just keep on doing the same thing over and over and over again because we keep on identifying with that false sense of who we are. We keep on identifying with that those beliefs, and none of those things are true. They're not real. They don't last. Your name, whether or not you're an American, whether or not you're a Catholic, a Jew, whatever, you can still do those things. They're still part of your personality. You can still go to church. You can still participate in life. You can still have your job, but you're not completely falling for all the drama that goes along with the ego, the separateness, this I'm separate from everybody else. You're not separate. You're one energy with everybody else and everything around you. We're all one energy. And from that place, you start to, it's beyond good and bad. It's beyond morals, really. It's this knowing that you are the very same thing as everybody else. So from that place, you can truly be compassionate, and you can truly look at somebody, and when they're being a jerk at work, or when you see some drama come up in your life, when you have some financial trouble, you have somebody giving you a hard time at the DMV or at your work, you can kind of see it for what it is. You can see it that that's the ego doing that to you. And you don't have to respond. You can stay in that space of peace. So basically, in a nutshell, the dark night of the soul isn't necessarily something bad. It's actually something very good that's happening to you, and it shouldn't be avoided, and it shouldn't be resisted, and you should never allow somebody to tell you that to just, get up and be happy. There's nothing wrong with positive attitude, and there's nothing wrong with being happy and choosing happiness over being depressed or sad. But there's something to be said about going into those dark spaces. In fact, we all really need to do that. We need to go into those dark spaces and kind of like, hopefully, maybe you can even find a teacher that can kind of help you through that, or somebody who's been down the road a little bit further than you. I've found some very cool people that help me, and I was lucky to have people like that kind of help me to kind of, because they had been through it themselves. And so you can kind of, they can kind of walk you. You have to do it yourself. It's all on your own. You have to go into those dark spaces because it's your own experience. It's not their experience. It's not the a guru's experience. It's your experience. You have to do it. And it may seem overwhelming, but the benefits from that are incredible, because once you look at those dark spaces, you realize that they're not real. They just kind of dissolve. Maybe you might have to look at them many, many times over and over again. I had to on certain occasions, on certain things kept on coming up, and you have to keep on looking at them internally. And you'll find that they just dissolve, and as they dissolve, they cease to be a problem. And then you start spending more and more time and start realizing that you are what's watching that happen. You're what's aware of that emotional state or that thought or that anxiety. You're not it. You're aware of it. So the dark night of the soul is, or this depression is, all these false things kind of like sitting there like a big, mess that's never been dealt with and has never been cleared. And now it's time to do that. Now it's time to kind of like look at that and to allow it to dissolve, allow it to process, allow yourself to go into those dark spaces so that you can gain the wisdom from it, and you can start living your life as we're all meant to do it, into your true state, your true self. So just take heart in that and know that it's not a bad thing, and it's nothing to be really afraid of. It really isn't. It seems like it is, but it really isn't. So just kind of breathe into it, create some space, continue to meditate, practice yoga, do all those things, participate in life, but kind of accept that, and look at it, observe it. The more you look at it, the more you'll realize that it just kind of dissipates. It's nothing that any of us, it's a natural thing, and it's part of you that needs to be incorporated in you so that you can be a whole being. You'll never know the light truly without knowing the dark. And so that's the process. Anyway, thank you.